Right, shall we get started? Hello everyone, thanks for joining us today. Casey, before we dive into the topic, how's your week been? Anything interesting going on with your language learning lately?
My week has been a bit chaotic, to be honest. I tried to pick up a few new expressions from a show I was watching, but they vanished from my brain the moment I tried to use them.
That sounds familiar. It happens to everyone. But moments like that always remind me of something I've believed for years. I actually think English is one of the easier languages to pick up for people who didn't grow up with it.
Wait, hold on. You can't just drop that sentence and walk away. People hearing this might close the app right now. What do you mean, easier?
No, really, I mean it. I'm not trying to be controversial, I just think English feels intimidating because of the way both of us were taught. But the language itself, it's actually quite forgiving.
All right, I'm listening. Give us an example, because I guarantee someone right now is thinking about irregular verbs and silently disagreeing with you.
Fair point. But look at the bigger picture. English barely has gendered nouns, there are no complicated cases like some European languages, and most day-to-day English is incredibly repetitive. Once you get the hang of a few common patterns, things start clicking into place.
When you put it like that, it does sound less scary. But why do so many learners, me included, still feel stuck?
Because we were taught to treat English like a giant list of words, we weren't shown the patterns that make the language manageable. So people end up memorizing thousands of isolated terms that never join together in real conversations.
That explains so much. When I was a student, I felt this pressure to expand my vocabulary list, as if quantity alone could make me fluent.
Exactly, but language doesn't work like that. You could memorize 5,000 words and still freeze when someone casually says something like, "Shall we grab a bite?" or "I might pop out later." Those aren't complicated words at all. They're just natural chunks you only recognize when you hear them enough times.
You know what? That actually happened to me last week. Someone asked if I wanted to grab a bite, and for a second, I genuinely thought they were talking about teeth.
There you go. That's the perfect example. English is easier when you start hearing it as little ready-made pieces rather than separate ingredients. So once you shift your mindset, you actually learn faster with less effort.
So you're saying English isn't the problem. The way we think about English is the problem?
Exactly. And once we sort out that mindset, vocabulary becomes much less painful to learn, which is why today's episode is all about reshaping how we think about words.
You know, Jen, when you said English isn't actually that hard, it really made me think. Because if that's true, then why do so many learners still feel completely stuck?
That's the thing. Most learners aren't stuck because of English itself. They're stuck because of the way they've been taught to see words. It's almost like we were trained to treat the language as a giant shopping list. And the longer the list, the more prepared we were supposed to feel.
Oh my God, that's exactly how I learned. I had this massive vocabulary notebook, and every time I wrote a new word in it, I felt strangely proud. But then whenever I had to speak, nothing came out.
Exactly. And it's not because you didn't memorize enough. It's because those words were just floating around your brain on their own. Your mind had no reason to link them together. So when you needed them, they all hid in different corners.
That explains why I used to panic when someone spoke a full sentence to me. I understood some of the words, but I couldn't make sense of the message.
Exactly. And that panic often leads to more list behavior. People think, "Oh no, I need 50 more words," or "I need to spell everything perfectly before I dare speak," which just makes the whole thing worse.
The spelling thing. I used to be obsessed with that. If I couldn't spell a word properly, I felt like I shouldn't use it at all.
Oh, trust me, even native speakers panic when someone asks them to spell definitely or accommodates. So if spelling is what's holding someone back, we need to rethink the whole approach.
All right, so let's say someone has memorized hundreds of words but still can't use them. What's actually going wrong?
The problem is that the brain doesn't like isolated information. It remembers stories, patterns, situations, not random pieces. So when someone learns words one by one, the brain keeps them in separate boxes. Nothing connects.
So that's why people can remember words but not use them.
Exactly. And that's also why we hear all these funny but common mistakes like do a decision, strong rain, eat medicine, or open the light. They all come from translating piece by piece instead of recognizing the natural combinations.
I've definitely said at least 2 of those in my life.
And that's completely normal, because if you only have the individual words, you'll naturally try to glue them together using your first language's logic. It's the only thing your brain can do at that moment.
So basically, we're not short on vocabulary. It's more like our vocabulary doesn't know each other.
Exactly that. And once you stop treating words like lonely little items and start seeing the way they behave together, everything becomes easier. That shift is a lot more powerful than memorizing another 100 words.
So today isn't about adding more words to the list, is it?
Not at all. If anything, it's about shrinking the list and expanding the connections. And once that clicks, vocabulary stops feeling like a mountain and more like, well, building blocks you already know how to play with.
So, Casey, since we've spent a bit of time talking about why isolated words don't really help, maybe we can look at what actually does help. And for me, that's chunks or collocations, whatever you want to call them.
All right, here we go. Every time you say chunks, I imagine little Lego pieces sitting on a table waiting to be clipped together.
Honestly, that's not far off, because a chunk is basically a ready-made piece. You don't build it from scratch every time. It's already packaged, already sensible, already natural. Take something like make a decision. People rarely pause to think make plus decision. It just comes out as one thing, like ordering a set menu. It arrives as a whole.
That's true. And take a break feels the same. No one ever says, just take, what do I take? Oh, right, a break.
Exactly, and there are so many more. People say, grab a coffee, kill time, hang out, have a look. And you never stop to analyze the grammar while you're saying them, do you?
Not at all. They just come as a package. But here's my question, Jen. How do learners know which combinations are natural? I mean, isn't that just another thing to memorize?
Good question. The funny thing is, you're not meant to memorize a list of collocations at all. That would completely miss the point. The idea is to start noticing which words show up together again and again. Because English repeats itself a lot. Seriously, if you watch a series or listen to a podcast for a week, you'll hear the same chunks returning like old friends.
And we used to chop them up without even realising it. No wonder nothing stuck.
Exactly. I once had a student who insisted on saying strong rain for months, and no one corrected him until he visited the UK and someone finally went, "Mate, it's heavy rain."
Poor guy. But I bet he never forgot heavy rain again.
Exactly, because it happened in a real moment. And that's how chunks work. They stick because they show up in situations that matter, not in lists that get buried in a notebook.
So, basically, chunks feel natural because they belong to situations, not textbooks.
That's it. And once you get used to catching these little packages, you realise you don't need as many individual words to sound fluent. You just need the right combinations.
And honestly, it feels less painful too, because instead of learning 100 words, you're learning 10 little ready-made pieces you can actually use.
Exactly. It's like cooking with ingredients versus cooking with a meal kit. Both work, but one takes a lot less stress.
So you're saying we should all learn English like we're using meal kits?
If it makes life easier, absolutely. Because once you get used to recognizing chunks, the whole language stops feeling random and starts feeling predictable. And that's when everything becomes much less scary.
So, the trick isn't to learn more words, but to learn the groups they travel in.
Exactly. And that one shift can save you years of frustration.
So we've talked about chunks as little ready-made pieces, but there's still something that confuses a lot of learners. If chunks are so useful, how do they actually grow? I mean, where do all these combinations come from?
I love this question because this is where English becomes weirdly fun. You know how earlier you said chunks remind you of Lego pieces? Well, English actually takes that idea even further. One single word can grow into an entire tree of expressions.
A tree? That sounds dramatic. Go on.
All right, take the word decide. On its own, it's simple. But the moment you look at its little family, things get interesting. There's decision, decisive, decisively, and each one joins different chunks. For example, you make a decision, you might face a decisive moment, and sometimes you have to act decisively, even if you're not fully ready.
So instead of remembering 4 random words, you're actually just seeing the same idea wearing different outfits.
Exactly. And once you understand that, vocabulary becomes far less painful because you're no longer learning individual words, you're learning families, you're learning patterns.
But this is where learners get scared, right? Because it sounds like we're talking about memorizing word endings, like school days all over again.
Promise it's nothing like that. You don't need a table, you don't need a list. What you need is curiosity. Once you notice how often these families appear, your brain automatically links them. Let's take another example. Happy. Everyone knows the word, but look at how it grows. There's happiness, unhappy, happily, and even make someone happy. And each one lives in its own little chunk.
And because they're related, every time you see one, you're secretly strengthening the others.
Exactly. That's why it's far more efficient than memorizing random vocabulary. One core idea, multiple expressions. One root, many branches.
So if someone learns decide, they should pay attention the next time decision or decisive pops up in a show or a conversation, right?
Exactly, because that's how you grow your chunk tree. You're not adding new seeds every time, you're letting one seed grow more branches. And that's far easier to remember. And once you get comfortable with this, you'll notice more advanced pairs too, like highly unlikely, deeply regret, strongly recommend.
They sound fancy, but they're actually just extensions of things we already know.
Exactly. It's one of the reasons advanced English feels natural. It's not harder words, it's the same words in different shapes.
So, families, not lists. Trees, not piles.
That's the idea. And once you start noticing these families, chunks suddenly feel easier to recognize. Everything becomes connected instead of scattered.
So Jen, we've talked about chunks and word families, but there's still this big question in people's minds. If someone isn't living in the UK, how on earth are they supposed to collect all these chunks?
The funny thing is, chunks don't actually live in the UK. They live in situations. They live in routines. So even if you're thousands of miles away, you're still surrounded by them, just in a slightly different form.
All right then, give me an example. Because I feel like a lot of learners think if I'm not on the tube hearing announcements every day, I'm missing out.
Not at all. Although the tube does have some brilliant chunks. The classic mind the gap, obviously, but also the next train is approaching. Please allow passengers to exit first. They come as whole units. But even without the tube, you still have supermarkets. And supermarkets are absolute gold mines.
Gold mines? That's dramatic.
Hear me out. Think about the signs you see. Buy one, get one free, on sale, out of stock, new in. These aren't phrases you translate word by word. They're little packets just sitting there, waiting for you to pick them up.
That's true. And once you notice them, you'll start seeing patterns everywhere.
Exactly. And coffee shops are another brilliant place. You queue, you order, you hear things like to have it in or take away. I'll grab it in a minute. No worries, take your time. None of these are complicated words, but they're very real chunks.
You just reminded me. I once totally misunderstood takeaway and thought the staff was offering to carry me away.
That's adorable. But see, that moment probably did more for your listening than any textbook. Real confusion sticks because the moment matters.
Fair enough. But what about people who don't really go out much or don't interact with English-speaking environments?
Then we create one. English is everywhere online. Shows, interviews, vlogs, even recipe videos. And because the language repeats itself constantly, you only need to pay attention long enough to start spotting the patterns.
I have to admit, when I watch a series now, I'm not trying to catch every word anymore. I just pay attention to what keeps popping up. Phrases like, you never know, sort it out, fair enough. Suddenly I hear them everywhere.
Exactly, because your brain loves repetition. Not lists, not definitions, repetition.
And I guess this is where note-taking changes too, right? Instead of writing one word per line, you write the whole chunk.
Exactly, because writing break won't help you much. But writing take a break gives you something alive, something you can actually use tomorrow.
And sometimes it's not even a full phrase. Sometimes it's just a pattern, like hearing, I'm running late, over and over until it sticks.
Exactly. Or, I'll be with you in a sec, or give me a moment. There you go. These tiny things carry so much of the language's rhythm, and once you start hearing them, English becomes less like a school subject and more like a habit you're picking up.
So the real trick isn't travelling abroad, it's paying attention to the world you already have.
Exactly. And once you start treating everyday life as your language factory, chunks grow naturally, one moment at a time.
You know, Casey, now that we've walked through chunks, word families, and where they come from in real life, it feels like we've been gently rearranging how we think about vocabulary altogether.
It really does. And honestly, it makes English feel a lot less intimidating because you're not staring at a mountain of words anymore.
Exactly. And that's really the point. English isn't difficult because of the language itself. It becomes difficult when we chop everything into tiny pieces and expect our brain to glue them back together. But once you start seeing chunks, and once you notice how word families grow, things stop feeling random. Suddenly, the language has patterns, rhythms, links, and your brain finally has something to hold on to.
And it also means we don't have to blame ourselves for forgetting this. Because the problem isn't memory, it's the lists themselves.
Exactly. So the next time you feel like a word just won't stick, maybe ask yourself, am I trying to learn this word alone? Should it actually be learned with its little group?
I like that. Does this word come with friends?
Exactly, because that's where progress really begins. Not from memorizing more words, but from seeing how they behave together.
So if you're listening right now and there was a phrase or a chunk from today that you really liked, don't just let it float away. Write it down. Say it out loud. Tell a friend. Use it once and you'll keep it.
And if you enjoy learning English in this sort of relaxed, chatty way, feel free to follow the podcast, leave a rating, or share it with someone who might find it helpful.
It genuinely helps more than you think. And it also tells us that you're enjoying these conversations, which means we get to keep making them.
So that's us for today. Thanks for spending your time with us, and we'll see you again next week for another little journey into English.
Take care, everyone. Bye for now.